Hey, some exciting new changes are happening over on our Patreon page at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. We've made some revisions to the tiers and added some cool new stuff, so this is an awesome time to consider backing us if you haven't so far, and if you're already a backer, go and take a look at those cool new things. Once again, that is patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, and thank you.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a Hunter's Appendix.
Yes, and this week we are talking about your responses to Byrgenwerth, the Hunter's Workshop, and also the Hypogean Gaol, or Gaol. Danielle had to take off because we record for a very long time, but we would encourage you to follow her on Twitter and idlethumbs.net, and also to read her writing at polygon.com.
Yeah, she's great. So yeah, we have a lot of responses, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. Graham says via Facebook, Nerd Alert, I always thought the red-hot shovels were a cool weapon for the enemies at Hemwick Charnel Lane, but I didn't know that they had any further meaning. However, I was listening to a podcast today about folklore, and in Ireland and Wales, there's mythology about changelings, half-humans that trolls and fairies supposedly used to replace the children they stole. Once the changeling is identified, you're supposed to punish it by holding a red-hot shovel held over a fire. Pretty brutal. I like how this starts to show the weapons were probably used to torture the humans you see strung up around the village, who were probably changelings in a sense, or at least believed to be.
Yeah, especially as they start getting that Innsmouth look, or that Yarnum look.
Yeah, start turning into beast.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I had no idea about that, but that is a super deep mythology cut, so thank you, Graham.
That's super cool.
Yeah, man, we used to be really fucked up towards kids.
Oh, like when you said "we," for some reason, the way you made it sound like something we used to do in the show. like you're apologizing for the way that
I think we've grown since January of 2013.
Yeah, or 1913, when we used to have children like go down to the pod mines and like literally assemble the tape by hand with their tiny deft fingers.
Yep, just reaching into the ever whirring pod mills.
Yeah, and into the lore mine, and just pull. Hopefully, they don't lose a finger.
Let's see here. Chris writes in via Facebook saying, one question though, why haven't you mentioned the crystal lizard replacements yet? They're super goofy and creepy, and based on what you've gone over, you should have seen at least two so far. One at the beginning of Old Yarnum and another in the room before the witches. So these are the something like wild beasts or something like that.
Yeah,
that look like they're still roughly lizard-like, but they're covered with these kind of anguished-looking faces. And instead of dropping minerals, like it makes sense for a crystal lizard to do, they drop either blood gems or the cold blood, right?
Yeah, their official name is Wandering Madness.
Okay.
Which is just great. Yeah, they're little piles of faces. I don't know why we didn't mention those. I think we just kind of took it for granted because I think we got really late into Dark Souls 2 before we talked about how crystal lizards are different.
A little bit, yeah.
In that game as well.
Yeah.
It's just easy to not think about.
Oh, some of them are red. Like they're just pinatas, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like we just think of them as part of the item pool in the game, I guess. But yeah, they are really weird and unique and disgusting looking.
I'm not sure like if they have any significance aside from mechanical significance, right? Which obviously that's important. These are mechanically oriented games. But I just kind of looked at them as, oh, here is a very minor eldritch thing that is going around and collecting the blood. And you are, just kind of killing them to get whatever they've harvested.
Well, and the lore significant. I mean, it's not like there's statues of these things in Chalice Dungeons. The significance is the fact that there are tons of them and bigger ones inside the dream.
Yep.
So you can presume that they come from there, one way or another. But other than that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is an omission. So I appreciate Chris pointing it out because it just didn't occur to us.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to responses to the area, Kenneth says via Facebook, I feel like Byrgenwerth let me down on my first playthrough. During the entire lead-up, I expected some large campus-like region that would take up a large portion of the second act. But instead, we got a smallish, 3-story observatory with very little interaction or questions to be answered. Ultimately, by the second or third playthrough, I decided I liked the subtleness of the area and the lore attached to how dangerous the Eldritch Truth can really be.
Yeah. It is like two rooms in a view.
Yeah. That never bothered me in this, though.
Yeah.
Because I came right off, you come right out of the Forbidden Forest, which is just like a never-ending nightmare, and I was pretty into like a small indoor area.
Yeah.
Also, some of the indoor areas in these games kind of push credibility. Mm-hmm. Like this seemed like, if not a college, is going to have tons of students, it does seem like an old-timey, like the Invisible College.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And it's also one of those things where that lore-rich detail is more expensive than big, wide forests full of nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'd rather them have kept this small and compact and a concession toward pacing rather than tried to pad it out.
Yeah, like when we're going to start talking about the Nightmare Frontier at some point relatively soon. Mm-hmm. And that is just a huge area with nothing much in it other than a couple of encounters. Like there's not set piece stuff. And I talked about it in the show, but like the clutter really makes this area feel bigger and fuller than it really is.
Yeah.
So
Alexander writes in via Facebook saying, I see it exactly like Kenneth does. Kenneth from immediately before. Byrgenwerth really was teased in the game, and it let us all down a bit. Don't get me wrong, it's still an area with great architecture and interesting foes, contributing to its heavy importance to the lore. Still, I wish they would have designed the Forbidden Woods a little bit smaller to give us more Byrgenwerth. The atmosphere was just great there, though.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nothing really to add. I don't necessarily take it the same way, but I think that we both agree that Forbidden Woods are a little bit too big.
Yep.
Yeah. Derek says, Alexander and Kenneth, I don't agree. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like the Syphil and Ollie breakfast cereal skits.
Yeah.
Fuck you, bacon.
No, he does not reference that.
Okay.
Derek instead says, I wish I had something to say about a lore-rich area that doesn't overstay its welcome. Upon diving into the lake, which I hoped was a reference to Dark Souls 2's opening, that's interesting, you see Rom, who is far from the lovable Star Trek Ferengi. Seeing, real quick, Cole,
yep.
In that Star Trek murder mystery dinner I keep talking about, the bad guy's name was Dr. Rom Yulin, and he turned out to be a Romulan spy. So,
did an uncle design this?
It's pretty bad. Dr. Rom Yulin. Seeing Dr. Rom Yulin and noticing that it was passive was confusing. There aren't peaceful bosses that you have to kill in Dark Souls, but this isn't Dark Souls, so I attacked. I expected the fight to get harder after killing the spiderlings, but not as impossible as it became. The spiderlings were easy to take down at first, and I'm glad the devs made the run from the bonfire lamp to the arena so close and easy, but it just ended with the blood echoes lying around in the arena to be grabbed, mostly unmolested. It seemed pointless. After Rom, the magic mortar tank decides to fire at you, that first volley was death without serious arcane resistance. Fire paper had to be my bread and butter. Guess who might as well have had an immunity to it? Not that bolt paper or the tonitrist solved my problems. This fight pushed me to grind my dick off in Chalice Dungeons.
Power sander. Wonderful turn of phrase, Derek.
This fight pushed me to grind my dick off in Chalice Dungeons. Rom also pushed me to a guide where I found out I hadn't touched 4 secret areas that I nearly reached before finishing Rom. The camera angle made learning to dodge magic mortar from above a joke. I never would have guessed to spam left or right alternating rolls in a Soul game. The rest of the game and boss fights were a breeze after this.
Grinding your dick.
Yeah, after you
Are you just imagining sparks flying?
Well, I like how it begins with a sentence that like you would hear in real life, but if you don't know about Bloodborne, like I grind my dick off in a Chalice dungeon. Like if you don't know what those things mean, it's just very evocative. It sounds like Derek also had a hard time with him. I'm in the Derek camp. Mm-hmm. In this bad boy, but I understand and respect people who are not.
Rom took me more tries than a lot of the other bosses did, just not as many as the Shadows of Yharnam, and so I have less kind of bad blood towards Rom than I do towards what immediately came before it. Like this felt oddly like a breather to me.
Amelia was really hard for me too. Yeah. Like to be fair, have you fought Rom in the Chalice dungeon yet?
No, I have not.
It's harder. the arena makes it much more difficult, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Did they pull a Bloodstarved Beast, or is it just more enclosed?
It's more enclosed. There are pillars.
Oh.
But it's much smaller. So like the spiders that he first summons, if you don't kill them and you just send Rom away, those spiders are always going to be a factor. So like by the end, you're dealing with a small enough area that all 3 clutches are significant. Man. So
yeah, that sucks. I'm not looking forward to this episode, Gary.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to suck so bad.
See if you can get a buddy.
Yeah, get Allison to like just hop in. Yeah.
Yeah, see if you can get somebody to just help you with them, because like that's what made Illusory helping me is what made the Chalice Dungeons at least more fun and quicker.
Yeah.
So
Luke writes in via the contact forum saying Byrgenwerth stands as a direct contrast to the area that comes before it. Out of the sparse, stretching woods, slight with lore and scattered with skill checks, you come to the impossibly dense college building that blows the unsuspecting brain faster than Philosophy 101. If the woods are RE4, then this is RE1. A creepy manor full of locked doors and conveniently shiny occult secrets that doubles and triples back upon itself, an unassuming labyrinth. Even before the post-ROM revelation, which I still don't quite comprehend, this area is full of moments that bring to mind new knowledge, new questions, and new eyes with which to see the world. It's a shame that it's all over too soon, that the knowledge gained compresses the space to a 90-second run-through. The Byrgenwerth Brundleflies, which I assume were the hockey team when the lake froze over, are little more than their first frenzying leap. The laser centipede is... who knows? And Rom is really only interesting in retrospect. The fight with him is hard, but only because his lackeys are imbued with patchwork godheads of their own, and Patch is capitalized there. The fight is more of an issue of maneuverability than anything else, a less arbitrary dragon god. If expectations are true and the trapdoor opens with the DLC, I will be very happy. But as is the brevity of Byrgenwerth University holds it back. We're only there in the summer semester, taking a sped-up unit, and it leaves a little to be desired, despite the high quality of the content on display. Very well put, Luke.
That is well put. The other big theory about that trapdoor, if it doesn't go to DLC, is that it goes to the lecture hall.
Oh, wow.
But there's no evidence for that. Like, you can't clip through it or anything.
The lecture hall is so big, though.
That's the thing. I don't necessarily buy it. It's just the other theory.
Yeah.
It's also like I connect the lecture hall to different kind of operators.
Yeah.
And the like, and it's so big. And like, imagine going to school where like you have to go in the first floor and then like go down a hatch to get to class. Like, that's really weird.
You've never been to the University of Cincinnati's campus.
Something party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some kind of party
if you remember the hatch, you never went through it.
That's dark. So Dan says via contact. So I wiped out the Shadows of Yharnam first try by spamming poison knives, and being lucky, I turn the corner and get mounted by a Brundlefuck. And good sentences in these. And suddenly I feel like I'm in a different game. I wrap my way around the building and find what I can only describe as a fire-breathing feather duster scorpion with a vagina face. The 180-degree turn this game pulls on you at Byrgenwerth is brilliant. Instead of the organic, sprawling landscapes filled with at least tangible monsters, you have a condensed arena filled with the disgusting Lovecraftian atrocities. Even the color palette is such a harsh contrast to the rest of the game so far, making you feel lost and scared in a most wonderful way. I don't have much to say about Rom. She was my Waterloo. Fuck Rom forever. And probably Waterloo in the Napoleon sense, and not the ABBA sense. So,
and not the you fight her on a big field of water sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Death Note writes in via context saying, regarding the Hypogean Gaol, all I can say is that this can be very tough considering that you can get there at a very early stage of the game. If you come here, then you can let yourself into some very early lore aspects. So kind of jumping ahead in the text, as it were. It is a great all-around area, and I feel that the atmosphere of this place sums up the dark nature of Bloodborne.
Agreed.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I wish that there was like the hidden jail and the hidden Yargle that you can explore feels really significant. Like the fact that a lot of people are just going to miss that.
Yeah.
Because it's really cool to go back there and see the contrast.
Yeah.
Like it's really pretty significant the way the enemies change.
You don't think that with how tough those enemies are that you're kind of like guaranteed to at least dip your toe in?
With how tough those enemies are.
The kidnappers when you when you find them, and the fact that they're kind of mostly placed at these bottlenecks that you're almost sure to come across.
No, I mean, because they're kind of not like they're bi-optional areas. There's one that's outside the cathedral ward that won't aggro unless you get close to him.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that's down at the bottom of the tube that takes you to the abandoned hunter's workshop, and that's an optional area.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think there are very many of them on the critical path. I think there mostly are on the outskirts. So, like, I guess
the one in the Forbidden Woods is actually by the path to Yosefka's clinic.
Yeah. Like, they're not. You don't have to run into them. So, like, it seems like it's kind of. I mean, I kind of like that now. I think about it, this idea of like you exploring optional areas opens up the biggest optional area, or one of the option opens up a huge optional area.
Yeah. Well, they only spawn if you beat the Bloodstar Beast, right? Or do they pop in if you like anytime in the evening?
I bet you it's evening. Yeah. I bet you I would be really surprised if they never spawn if you never defeat the Bloodstar Beast. That'd be really surprising. But yeah, maybe it'd be good thing to check out.
Mm-hmm.
Steven says via contact. There's so much to say about these areas, but I'll try to keep it brief. Byrgenwerth is home to some awesome looking enemies, and my favorite hunter fight in the mansion. The dive into the lake is so badass. Rom, though, really awesome as aesthetic and concept is in my opinion, the worst boss fight across this game and the Souls games. I don't like how it's more about an HP drain race than a tactical experience of learning your enemy. Perhaps I'm just dumb and not able to find a strategy, but I always find myself tanking through most of the fight. As for the Hunter's Workshop, that was such a great moment when I made this seemingly impossible drop/jump to a door concealed in darkness and found myself in a place so familiar, yet somehow more sad than the Hunter's dream. The fact that the doll sits lifeless here is mind-boggling. I wonder if her consciousness existed even while she was inanimate in the waking world, and manifest her inherent love for the hunter in the hub. And it's discussed for what Gurman suggests he, and possibly other hunters, used her for in the nightmare as the Winter Lanterns.
Yeah. So the doll is pretty complicated, and we didn't really talk about the fact that she is lifeless in the quote-unquote real world.
Yeah.
And animated once you get insight in the dream, or what possibly is animating her. But I like this kind of ascription of kind of agency to her, because I don't like her just being this force that serves the will of the hunter as much,
Or at the very least, she's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
There, And you bring up the Winter Lanterns. We'll talk about that when we talk about that enemy, but there's a specific enemy that wears the clothing set, and I don't know why. Like, I haven't figured out that lore connection.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to ascribe anything to chance in any of these games, but part of me thinks it just looked cool as a clothing set. You had to put a clothing set on the enemy, and it looked the best because I can't figure out the lore stuff. So if people have theories, like, I'd be interested to hear them.
Yeah.
But I don't know why that monster wears doll's clothing.
Yeah. Like, saying a dream did it feels like a scoundrel's retreat.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
So Alexander writes in saying that he had listened to some of our previous episodes, but is now just coming to Bloodborne and is able to comment, having just played this. After finally defeating the Shadows of Yharnam, of course, they had to spit fire, rather. It's not enough that there are 3 of them. I was literally shaking with adrenaline. I proceeded, feeling invincible and content with my skills as a soul veteran, turning the corner to face every enemy foolish enough to attack the boss slayer, the magnificent destroyer of Demo, and there's a giant fly-like spawn of the devil sitting on my head, feasting on my flesh. Thanks for that, From. I survived it only to be robbed of 3 effing insight because of the slurper lurker under the tree. So many awesome sentences.
Yeah, this is real good. Good
slurper lurker,
guys.
man. Fair enough, I thought to myself. This was your fault, my fault. You'll be more careful from now on. So I slowly crept forward into the house, admiring the beautiful and timeless architecture and the depressing atmosphere while enjoying the thought that I am the first one seeing this mysterious academy in a long time. By further observation of the room, I saw a chest, and without checking twice, I rushed to it, because why would there be a trap? I mean, it's not like Bloodborne is a game that encourages analyzing the situation and proceeding with caution. As I then inspected my precious loot, thinking the universe and me alone are alone in this cozy place, I got slaughtered by the hostile choir hunter. It was a nice reminder to always be aware of your surroundings, and a nice start for the smallest but most interesting area of the game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
And he also, Alexander mentioned in that early bit that he's from Germany. Mm-hmm. And it still tickles me when we have international fans.
I know, right? So
yeah.
Wonderful. Like, even if we don't directly read it in the response, let us know, because I don't know. I like thinking that we are all part of this one big community.
Yeah, all over the world. And then also I agree with you and not sympathize. I'm with you on that idea of this academy. I mean, we're going to do, and this is, I mean, it doesn't really matter. That's spoiler.
Yeah, well.
At some point, we're going to do a Lovecraft episode.
Yeah.
For Bloodborne, and that academy. You know, I mentioned the main episode, but that like place of learning as place of horror is so cool to me. And this just scratched that itch for me as well.
Yep.
Dalton says via contact, atmospherically brilliant. Byrgenwerth is terrifying and I love it. It seems a lot of people criticize this area for its brevity, but bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. It would have been cool to walk the corridors of a much bigger campus, but I think it's effective in the narrative by showing how all this evil and horror spawned from this small, overzealous schoolhouse. The ROM reveal is great, and runs against the Ivory King for best boss entrance, although probably one of my least favorite bosses in the game, due to being one of the fortunately few swarm fights in Bloodborne.
Yeah, again, that aesthetic and mechanic divide.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's near impossible to summon for this fight as well.
Oh,
I've never successfully done it just because I think the demand is just too high.
I've never tried it.
Yeah, I've tried it, and you technically can. If you look it up, but I think that there's just a lot of people looking for help because it's a really hard mandatory fight.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can never really summon for the Shadow of Yharnam fight either, and that's one that I would really want to have help for more.
Yeah, because it's multiple.
Yeah.
Multiple guys. Yeah.
Andy writes in via the contact forum saying, I liked Byrgenwerth a lot as an area. For me, the Forbidden Woods felt like the most bloated and tedious area in a Souls game yet. So coming to somewhere so compact and lore-rich was just the tonic. The increasingly weird enemies had me questioning what was going on, and the fight with the hunter was difficult without being frustrating. The encounter with Master William was weird too, as he silently beckoned you to head towards the lake. For this boss, I was summoned a bunch of times, and I noticed that almost everyone had killed Willem. Apparently you get a decent rune for doing this? Seems a bit rough though. The guy is just chilling on his balcony, checking out the view with his head full of eyeballs, but whatever. Then we get to Rom. The fight was so unbelievably aggravating that I nearly put down the game never to return. First it was the little spiders, then the blue missile attack, and then the little spiders again. After 30 attempts, I started to despair and went to YouTube. I saw people with the Tonitrus, a weapon that I didn't have the stats for. Seriously, Dex builds have so little to work with. Strolling up to Rom, whacking away unmolested by the small spiders. Why were they so aggressive in my game? They were everywhere and could one-shot me and did frequently. The blue bolts from the sky seemed unavoidable, despite assurances from others online that they were, and I should just get good. This guy is easy. End quote. I tried summoning over and over again, rarely getting any bites, but wasting insight each time. Eventually, I managed to get someone in and scraped past the boss, to my enormous relief. I'm much cooler on Bloodborne than most, it would seem. The environmental clutter and the desaturation of color mentioned in the last episode really got to me. I found it really hard to fight when constantly tripping over junk or gravestones, and found the game really hard to look at for long periods of times due to everything being so washed out. When I first arrived at Rom's boss arena, it was something of a soothing balm for my eyes, though one of the most beautiful areas in a Souls game. It's such a shame that it was hiding what was, for me, one of the cheapest and most annoying bosses.
Yeah.
Yep.
All things I agree with. Like, I mean, I do love Bloodborne, but I agree with those criticisms of it.
Yep.
I don't truck with people who tell me to get good and this is easy.
No.
Like, I don't want to tell you how to live your life, but I think that's shitty. And people shouldn't do that.
I mean, just it is a false notion that this is easy means everything is going to be easy uniformly for everybody else. And again, I don't mean to like take us into a nosedive into the slurry of subjectivity, but like it's so diminishing to just ignore the idea that people would have trouble with something that you didn't have trouble with.
It's also, and this is all good fodder for when we do that talk, but it also overplays the idea of difficulty as the primary thing by which these games should be judged by. Like that's the fulcrum that this is bent upon, is difficulty, and that's not the most important or coolest thing about these games. You know, so like people who are just kind of like, get good, you can just get through it. Like I respect like the, you know, people who go for the challenge. Like I have, you know, ridiculous amounts of respect for like Lobos.
Yeah, I mean, Lobos is the patron saint of patience.
Yeah, I have ridiculous respect for just going in for the challenge, but that's not all he likes about the games, and he would never like do that. Like he would never. People, you know, who ask him like how he gets through things, he's just like, well, lots of practice and dying tons of times, and it's all up there. Like there's no pride, like there's no self-aggrandizement in it.
No,
and that's something that I have a easier time respecting than people who just, you know, throw out the old memes.
Just dismissive. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it is dismissive. So don't be dismissive. You know, just in general. Sean says, via contact, I love all the areas you guys are discussing on the show, and I hope Old Hunter's Workshop includes the abandoned workshop. That's actually what he meant, I think.
Yep.
I loved entering it after a long time trying to find it. I'd seen it on a map but couldn't figure out how to get there, and realizing that it was a failed version of the Hunter's Dream. I wish the rewards for finding it were a little bit more satisfying, but I'll take that third umbilical cord if it means seeing the real ending. As for Byrgenwerth, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on it. Being one of the major players in the plot, I expected to find a little bit more there in the way of followers. My favorite moment was the first time finding Willem outside. I had 2 cooperators with me, both of whom got stuck at the door. Both of them kept frantically gesturing towards the moon. I must have spent 5 minutes running around that platform before noticing the ripples in the water. The boss battle was a great reward for figuring that out, and the messages afterwards, to seek the Nightmare Newborn, was so intriguing that it pulled me forward. And we didn't mention that, but if you... cooperators cannot actually come through the door to help you until you go down to the lake.
Oh, so they have to mimic Willem.
They have to mimic Willem.
Yeah, they have to point too. Like, no, go there.
Yeah,
jump.
I think maybe the idea is so they can't kill Willem for you.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's the case, but that could be it. Like you don't need people up there with your Willem. But yeah, so you have to actually go down to the lake before people can join you.
Yeah.
In the fight. I saw it as the opposite version. I never saw the Abandoned Hunter's Workshop as a fake version of the Dream. I saw the Dream as a fake version of the Abandoned Workshop.
Again, just like the physical location, that it's the locus of the Dream, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Dream version it's like the Hunter's Workshop, but it wasn't really.
So just like we found, or just like I found some similarity between Raining Blood and Bloodborne, how about Come Sail Away?
Oh, sure.
Just talking about jumping into the lake and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just there's a little bit of truth in all these songs. Huh.
Yeah.
A little bit of cosmic truth, rather. We jumped aboard their starship.
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. And so we have a Just Fun, and this is actually a continuation of one of Luke's responses from before, saying, you mentioned in the last episode that boars aren't Bloodborne's channelers. Counterpoint, what if they are? I'm not proposing that the boars
that was the end of the response.
Your move.
Yeah. Let's continue this over the course of months.
Luke actually offers a very well-reasoned defense of that hypothetical. I'm not proposing that the boars are Seath's eyes on the outside, just that there might be something to their placement, that they may not be entirely bereft of lore. A note found in Byrgenwerth University reads, when the red moon hangs low, the line between man and beast is blurred, and we see the effects of this everywhere in the game. The physical villagers become werewolves, the scholars turn into flies. Animals have an important metaphorical place in this world, and so I have to assume these big guys do too. Now, you can argue that there are dogs in the game that are anything but dogs, give or take a crow hybrid. The difference is that they are to normal scale and have a narrative place in the mythology of the hunt. These boars that we see, though, are different. They're ridiculously big and don't fit in the universe at all. This made me wonder, what if that's because they're actually not in it? The boars appear in very strange places. Ignoring the initial novelty boar, they spawn regularly in 2 locations by the shadows, and once in the original Hypogean Gaol. What first caught my attention about the jail pigs is that they disappear once Rom's illusion is lifted, and in their place are these horrific masses of men. It makes a certain kind of sense to me that what happens here is not a replacement, but a revelation. The masses of men were there the whole time. Your mind just couldn't comprehend the imagery that replaced them with pigs. A little bit of amnesia there, right? If this is the case, Luke continues, then are all the hybrids actually figments of the player's imagination? Are the flies just a way of coping with seeing men covered with thousands of eyes? Are the werewolves our way of computing the facts that these villagers are acting like beasts? These fatties, perhaps smos of this world, are turned into pigmen. More than any others suggested to me an unreliable narrator in the game's camera. We see boars, but maybe the reality is something else. Maybe Bloodborne is less a dream and more of a shallow Hal situation, wherein the hunters and the citizen, wherein the hunters see in the citizens their inner beast. See Beast Roar. Referencing the item description. Probably not, but I can't quite just accept that there are giant pigs for no reason.
That's a super cool idea.
That's a lot of gymnastics. I like gymnastics that arrive at a very delicate and intricate kind of mechanic for, let's say, ontology. Yeah.
It's just there are pigs after Rom, though.
Yep.
Like, that's the thing. Like, why don't those pigs get transformed? Like, I think that there's already a slightly less cool version of what you're talking about in that the pigs maybe have all those eyes like they do later.
Yep.
But we're not seeing the eyes. We're just seeing them as normal pigs. So it's not like they're stacks of corpses, like pulling themselves along on mine carts. It's that they're, eyeball pigs, and we see them as regular pigs.
Yeah.
Maybe in case it's actually a physical change. But since, it suggests that it's, tied into insight.
Yeah.
Like, you could argue that, but like there's already like a less cool version of it, or a less drastic version of that built into the game.
Yeah.
So
it's just one of those things, right? But like, we love an unreliable narrative narrator conceit, and when one is built directly into the text by both insight and also kind of the revelations about the way that this world we're in works, all of a sudden we see a bunch of these around it, and it is super fun to play games.
Yeah. I don't necessarily buy it, but I like you getting there. Like, I'll watch somebody, push. I like reading that kind of stuff.
I liked following the path.
Yep. Indeed. So I think that's about it.
Just about. Yeah. So this has been a wonderful couple of episodes, if I can say so myself. Great fun for an awesome area. We loved having Danielle on. Check the notes for ways that you can follow her and her work.
And so we don't have deleted scenes.
Nope.
I remember we don't. So usually we do, but when we have guests, especially, we try to value their time.
Yep.
So we usually not fart around quite as much.
Yep.
So this is the end of the episode. We won't go through the entire admin spiel we went to in the last episode. We made a bunch of announcements in the last episode that you guys have probably heard.
Yeah.
The kind of takeaway is that our Patreon is changing. You should support it because you get better and cooler stuff at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. And a live appearance somewhere, we're not going to mention every episode between now and November, but while it's still fresh. Keep watching our social media stuff to get more details on that. And as it comes around, and try to end up in Columbus in the second weekend, like November 6th through the 8th or what have you.
Yeah.
To come see us do a panel.
Yep. Our social media presence is facebook.com/bonfiresidechat, or individually our Twitters. Mine is @Kole Ross, KOLEROSS. Gary?
Yep, I'm Gary Buh, GaryBuh.
Yeah. And thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to hearing what you think about either Scholar of the First Sin or Canehurst.
Yep. And until next time, what should they do, Cole?
They should banish this dreadful dream.
Indeed.
Cleanse us from this dreadful dream. There we go.
Seek the nightmare of newborn.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon